Holla holla. We them boys.
We good?
Yeah, you know that song?
Who's that?
Holla holla, we them boys?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who sings it?
I don't know.
I'm looking at the new Linkin Park singer.
Yeah, female. She
That was
rocks,
cool.
dude.
I was for the humans out there. We were talking about some music, and Linkin Park came up, and I said, "Have you heard this song?" I thought it was an old song. I haven't really paid attention. And the song "Heavy as the Crown," and then you said, "Oh, that's the new singer." I think. I'm like, "What do you mean? It's a girl?" I'm like, "No." And then I didn't know. I would have known it wasn't Chester Bennington.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Chester.
what a no, and I go to go into to go into Linkin Park and be the lead singer and like have that command and stuff. What is her name? Emily Armstrong.
Yeah, she rocks.
What a good voice on her.
The my favorite one is I think it's called Over Each Other.
Is that the one
That's a
we
new one.
played
That's
this
the one I
morning?
play. Yeah, I like that one. I listen to that one when
Linkin
I'm
Park's a good band.
They're great, man. They're awesome. They were
Heavy
one of
as
my
a Crown. It was the first time I heard it was at Ottawa 67's game. I was watching my kid play.
When I was a kid, they were one of my favorite. They're one of my favorites. I still really like them, but they had a lot of bangers, man. They had a couple. They had, I think, 2 albums. The In the End album, and then the next one, which I think had the song like Faint on it, and like a couple of those. I think those are 2 different albums. If I could be wrong, but whatever. Those 2 were like, it's like song after song.
Oh, it's so good.
They just hammer out all of them, man. They're awesome.
So good.
The guy, I forget the other guy's not Chester, but the other guy that sings or raps kind of or whatever. I remember when I was a kid watching, remember MTV? Of course you remember MTV.
Oh,
Why would you not?
I'm not dead.
Yeah. He used to have like the hair spikes up like everywhere. Do you remember that? And Chester had like a phase of doing that too. But man, yeah, what a wicked band. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the PowerTech Online Membership Program. If you've been listening to Andy and I wondering, hey, how are they able to get all this podcast content out there? Well, that's because of our members. For just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our online video library, including hundreds of videos of Coach Andy teaching, and have the option for consultation calls with Andy or myself to go over anything you need. We can cover training, nutrition, coaching, parenting, agents, the junior college hockey path, whatever's of interest to you. You'll also be able to participate in our popular Ask Me Anything episodes, have access to special discount codes, and be given priority for any PowerTech in-person camps or events. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Visit powertechhockey.ca/memberships or find the link in the description of this video to learn more. I've listened to probably one of the best podcasts. I'm a big podcast guy myself. It was part of the reason why we started this as a podcast, is because I am a big podcast consumer. I listen to one podcast called Perform. It's by Dr. Andy Galpin, and he's like just a renowned strength trainer, whatever. He's really come up like
Andy Galpin.
Andy Galpin.
Where's he out of? Is he college?
I want to say is it Cal State Fullerton, I believe. Cal State Fullerton, is that a thing? Andy Galpin.
Because I feel like I know the name, but maybe I don't know the name.
Galpin teach. No, not live. Teach. Yeah, Cal State Fullerton. That's right. So anyways, he's just like someone I again, like we talk about having mentors. He's a mentor that I don't know. You know, he's one of those guys. He came up over the last like several years. He's been on a lot of big podcasts. His podcast is an offshoot of the Andrew Huberman podcast, which is interesting. So he's started his own. It's called Perform, and it's awesome. Normally, they're more. I don't even want to say advanced. They're not. They try to make it as accessible as possible. But you know, you listen to some of these guys sometimes, and just like the terminology, the vocabulary makes it not accessible. I think he does a really good job of making it accessible, just like Andrew Huberman does with his podcast. Like he tries to dumb it down and make it easy to digest for just like the lay person. But he's very advanced in what he knows, and he's at like the cutting edge of all this stuff, research and whatnot. So he had one come out the other day about strength training for kids. And this was like one of the most applicable podcasts to everyone that listens to our podcast, because it's talking about what the benefits are, like fully from when the kid's out of the chute right till they're going off to be an adult and train for high level athletics as a high level athlete. So he had a ton of like awesome points, awesome content, really informative for people that don't have any framework for what it means to strength train, to learn to be an athlete, and all of this jazz. So I want to run through like some of what he talked about in that podcast, because I think it's super applicable and appropriate, and hopefully it gives people some motivation to maybe go listen to that podcast. And if not, you're good. And if not, you're good. If not, then I want this to be like at least some of that information, so that if they don't go listen to it, they at least got something out of it. So
and to follow up with that, is that mine, bud? Thank you. To follow up
oh,
with
you
that,
didn't give me one? Yeah, you can't say that. We're recording. Sorry, go ahead.
To follow up with that, I was speaking with Mary Tam. I told you that, but she's does all prehab, chiropractic, all these different things, and she was one of our guests that Ian goes to. That's Charlie's agent, and put me in touch with her. And we had a nice conversation once, and she sent me the forms of questions that might, like, she goes, I'm not sure if I want to do the podcast because I'm not sure if I speak well on things like that, but I really would like if you guys could touch on some of the when to work out, when to rehab, when to go to chiropractic stuff. So maybe we'll follow up with that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that'd be a good supplement.
And she said April would be a better time for.
So, and this is maybe like, just take a step back, something that I want to move to, I haven't even said this to you yet, but something I want to move more towards, which I think we kind of do anyways, is I don't feel like I'm an expert at anything, but I feel like with the platform that we have, I really want to move to connect people with good resources as much as possible. So if it's not us, it's whoever we think could be the best person to talk to or listen to about these kinds of topics that are interesting to people. I really want to leverage what we have and connect people in a way that's free, so that's when we have guests on, or when we talk about things like this, it's like, I want it to be something that people can get, like a zero cost kind of thing, which is what I get out of a lot of these podcasts that I listen to, right? It's free information that is super helpful and teaches me a lot. So anyways, he went through so much good stuff. So so much good stuff. So many good things. Did you pick up on that when I said it? So much good stuff. That's horrible English. So I'm going to go through a couple things, and then we can talk about it. We'll see how far I get. If I get through all of it, cool. If I don't, then it doesn't matter. So there was just a couple major themes that I kind of picked out of it that I really liked. One was first, like, debunking myths. That was how we started off the episode, which was great because there's so much stuff said about training as a kid or training when you're young, and people just don't know what they're talking about, and
stunt your growth if you lift weights.
Exactly. Okay. Like these kinds of things. Yeah. And like the thing that was interesting that Andy Galpin was saying in the podcast is, like, even the experts don't necessarily know, because some of the research has if you read have you read a paper before, like a scientific paper? How they have like the abstract, and the whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
Your nose, right?
Do you know what I'm talking about, though?
I do, but a paper is like just a basic research paper, and it's all it's the most boring shit you could ever read, kind of.
Unless you're a nerd, right? So for me, it just kind of like the basic framework of a paper is they'll have the abstract, which is like a high level summary, and then they have the introduction, the methods, the results, the conclusion, right? And if you go to any paper, you can read the abstract, and basically you get what the researchers are saying is the conclusion of the paper, right? And what some of the problems can be about that is the results of a paper are up for interpretation, right? So you do a study, you get a conclusion, and a human has to interpret those results and say, this is my conclusion, right? So if you read the conclusion that they state, it might not always be the same conclusion that the data shows, because you interpret the data, right? So if you interpret it one way and somebody else looks at it and interprets the data another way, then you might not have the same conclusion.
Okay, so could it also be, we've talked about this before, could it be also like we've talked about in fitness, when they say to lose weight or to gain strength or whatever? We did a study on 20 subjects, and if by 10 did this, 10 did this, the 10 that did this got this result, 10 that got this result. But so let's say strength training, and the improvements were like off the charts when they started lifting weights, but they were not athletes. So like, could it include stuff like that? So like, that's subjective, because yes, someone that lifted weights for 3 months, 3 times a week got amazing results compared to the average guy, but an athlete doing the exact same thing would get zero results because it's nothing of a work. It's a nothing burger workout. So that would be another
That's an
way of
example.
interpretation.
Yes. So
Okay.
like the difference would be, okay, we have these 10 people, they did this and got this result. We have this 10 people, they did this and got this result. The results, like you have to take those results and say, okay, what does this mean? In saying, what does this mean? That's where the interpretation comes in, right? So one person can look at it one way, one person can look at it the other way. So the reason I did that whole spiel is because when researchers say what they think they know about a certain topic, if they don't go through and actually interpret the data themselves, then you're taking for granted the interpretation of somebody else, right? So in some of these studies, it'll show the results of like for children weightlifting, for example. It's like if they are provided they are lifting safely, provided they are lifting yada yada yada, there's all these benefits to weightlifting. But in the conclusion, they still say this may not be appropriate for children without explaining those caveats, right? So your takeaway reading the conclusion could be, well, then kids, yeah, it's not safe. Kids shouldn't weight train, right? But that's not actually what the results said, you know? So this is where like a lot of these myths come from. And so the one that he was talking about was the stunting your growth thing. He started with that one, and it was because in that where that came from, there was a study about kids that do hard labor, and kids that do hard labor were shown to not. There was a correlation between them not growing as much as kids that don't do hard labor. I might be off a little bit, but did you get my point? It wasn't even weightlifting; it was doing hard labor.
Yeah,
and he was saying,
hay or something.
Yeah, and he was saying like the correlation was there, but it didn't take into account. Are they freaking malnourished because they're doing hard labor? Are they like these kinds of things, right?
Yeah. Do they do it for 8 hours straight or 1 hour straight?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like that, and it was a correlation, right? It wasn't even necessarily causal, but anyways, so those types of things are the problem. So anyways, that was one major theme, which was interesting. So I'll get into a little bit of that. Talking about like the concept of movement literacy and just understanding why it's important to strength train even when you're young, because it promotes what he calls movement literacy, or what the scientific community calls movement literacy, which is just good for everything.
Learning the language of movement.
Exactly. Physical and mental benefits, how to do things safely, and then avoiding early specialization at the end, which was another interesting one. He also spent some time talking about like age appropriate, and he went through kind of like the long-term athletic development plan type stuff and talked through that. And so it was a lot of like just awesome information about that kind of stuff, which was cool. So I'll talk like a little bit about some of these topics, but I want to do some of these myths first, because these ones are, if I don't get to the rest of the stuff, the myths are the most important, because these are the things that stick in people's head, that they think this is a serious issue or this is something that they're scared of or whatever. And it's not founded really in a lot of solid science, but the myths, they hang around, right? What's the saying? A lie goes around the world twice before the truth something. You know the saying I'm talking about, or no? No?
Makes sense.
Yeah, anyways. So
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So the first one is, as we said, strength training stunts growth and harms growth plates, right? Which is that study I just said. Like it was based on that hard labor in young kids, and it just kind of perpetuated through up till the present day. People still say that to me. And not only is that not true, it's the opposite of true. Like the amount of benefit you can get from starting strength training when you're a child, young, before puberty, not even puberty, before puberty, is crazy. Now the definition of strength training is where people can get hung up, right? It's like doing strength training does not mean we're doing a max power lift or match snatch or clean and jerk or squat, deadlift, whatever, when they're 4. Like that's not what that means necessarily, right? And it's funny because the opposite is kind of also true at the other end of the spectrum as you get older. Like I was listening to another podcast the other day, Peter Tia podcast, and he was talking about strength training in elderly people, and how like people start strength programs when they're like 70, and how beneficial it is for them that are becoming more frail, increasing bone density and all these kinds of things. Starting at 70, they've never touched a weight, and they start when they're 70, So it's cool how like the arc, like the development arc that he was kind of talking about the podcast too, is like you start young, very general, you kind of start to hyper specialize. And then once you're done playing sports, you kind of like go back to very general again and like finish off at that towards the end of life being very general, right? So that's kind of interesting. Strength training is only suitable for athletic children. So if you only if you play sports.
Yeah, that's actually stupid.
That's right. And I noticed this. Maybe I've noticed this as well. Like when I do some of these, teach some of these classes, and sometimes I do more general fitness things that are not hyper hockey players, basically, that are doing all hockey stuff and hockey training and off ice and all this stuff. It's just general kids at school, and like the amount of them that can't do just basic movement, like they can't skip, like they can't jump on one leg, and
skipping is a lost art, man.
Well, and like they don't know how to crawl, like they don't know how to roll. Like if you say like, hey, like roll around and play, kid, like they don't know how to do that. Like I don't know, like I remember at school like trying to do like front rolls and like, right, grabbing and hanging on stuff and like all this, and kids just don't know how to do it, and they can't throw, they can't use their limbs independently. And the reason that's an issue is that it sets them up to be more likely to get hurt later, because they don't know how to get in and out of positions. Like they don't know what it feels like when like you have to grab something down over here and like how to do that the right way. And like it doesn't even have anything to do with sport at all. It has nothing to do with sport, actually. It has to do with just life. It's just moving around. And so people that don't do that, it's very it can be very problematic as they get older from like a health perspective generally. So it's not just for athletes. You can cut me off anytime you want.
No, I was listening. I agree with all that. Like, I have a kind of a funny story, but I don't know if I want to tell it right now.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it fits in here. So, but no, I agree.
That's fine. I just want
the thing is like, yeah, what the definition of what is strength training? It's like immediately you go to, right. I assume when people say it's dangerous or you could get hurt, you're immediately going to something that is not what you're even talking about. So like a strength training, resistance training doesn't mean that you have a whole bunch of weight on your back squatting or bench pressing, but very similar to it, you could be just doing box jumps. That's resistance training. It is strength training. It could be, body weight squats. It could be push-ups. Like a push-up is a bench press. So that's why I always laughed at people. Like even when I was young, I'm like, when people would say that, not when I was young, but when I was training guys and when I was really learning my fitness stuff, when I heard people say, well, yeah, he's too young to work out. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've done push-ups my whole life. I've done sit-ups my whole life. I've jumped, I've ran up hills and stuff. It's just a different, because it doesn't have a barbell on your back. Like, no, sorry. If you do a squat, a body weight squat, and mom and dad say, well, yeah, that's okay. Or coach says, that's okay. So now if I put a 12-pound or 25-pound weight in front of, plate in front of any squats, is that okay? Or is that bad? It's only 12 more pounds. Okay, well, what if I put a 45-pound bar on his back and even a safety squat where your hands are here? Is that bad now or is that good? Like when is that, where has it become, oh, that's not good? Well, now if you go in there and say, okay, the first week, well, you can't do it anyways. Like you're not progressing to a 135-pound squat the first time you ever squat anyways. So it's actually not dangerous. So then, and I always said that when people say, well, you can't lift weights, like you look at a bench press. Okay, so what is a bench press? You're laying there and you're pushing your arms up. Well, just flip yourself over, put your toes on the ground and put your chest to the ground and push yourself up. It's a bench press. So now if I put a 25-pound weight on my back while I do the bench press, is that bad? It's the same exercise. So it's a bench press as a push-up, but then it's a matter of, are you stupid? But to say it's dangerous is like, it's not very good advice. Like I could say like kids that we worked out with that started working out with my son, kids that have been around, like I didn't even question my son. Like he was curious. How the trap bar deadlift? Can I try? Imagine, no. Yeah, of course you can try. And then he does the pattern and the pattern is bad or it's good. And you go, oh, okay, well, or he tries to lift it with his arms like this. It's like, no, he learned a pattern. And you become a better athlete.
Well, and that
throwing a ball.
That's a really good point because you do these movements every day, anyways. right? Like you bend down to tie your shoe, you bend down to pick something up, you turn this way, you're going upstairs, you're going downstairs, you're doing all these different things that will require different types of movement. So you do it, and it's like, okay, so if it's okay to do a body weight squat, like I'm watching some of my family, extended family, they have like young kids that are just like learning to walk, right? And they're just learning to get up and all this stuff. And I'm so fascinated by like they sit at the bottom of a squat so perfectly. Like
Yeah, that's the natural. Yeah.
They flawlessly sit at the bottom of a squat. Like the form is perfect. It's like, how is that possible? You know? And it's so amazing to watch. But then I look at that, I'm like, okay, so that movement is fine. Like everyone agrees that that's fine because it's a kid just naturally doing it. Okay. So if they hold 1 pound, is it okay? If they hold 2, if they hold 3, if they hold 4, where's the line?
Or if you have a teddy bear in one hand and you go do it, are you too unbalanced? You got to balance it out with another one. Yeah,
exactly.
Like,
right.
Yeah,
So and that kind of leads to the next one. So this says that children should wait till around age 12 to begin strength training. And I use that puberty line as a mark because in my head, when I'm talking about strength training, which this is inaccurate, this has actually now changed how I'm going to describe it. I just talk about strength training as like focused weightlifting. Yeah, right. Like that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying strength training. Like really getting into being a competent weightlifter. That's what I mean when I say like, yeah, around puberty-ish, you start to get the hormones, you get a little bit more benefit, like yada yada. But that doesn't mean before that do nothing, right? And the things that you're doing before that are still strength training, right? So it's kind of changed my perspective a little bit on how I describe what it is that you're supposed to be doing.
Like the part changes that just using the word puberty?
Or using the word strength training. Like when people ask when should you start training, like I would typically say start getting into the gym like when you're around puberty.
First
That's what I would say.
First body hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get in there. No, really. Get in there.
And that's what I remember you said that to my dad too, whatever. And like when I'm saying that and giving that advice, what I'm talking about is the focused like weightlifting with purpose. But to be more precise, when we're talking about strength training, that should be happening all the time. Like it should be happening in various forms, which I'll get into in a little bit about just like learning movement. That is all part of strengthening, right? So being more precise with my terminology, it's going to change how I describe it a little bit when people ask the question, because it's not just when you're 12. It's not like do nothing until you're 12, right? It's
What
like,
if you're 11 years, 11 months, and 12 days?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Strength training causes girls to develop bulky muscles. That's another myth. That one's actually funny because a lot of women say that too. They're scared of like getting bulky. And this is one that
A lot of guys say that.
Yeah, they don't want to get too bulky.
I want to get bulky. That's why I don't lift.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
that's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, that one's funny to me too because you would know this as well, and I knew this before hearing of this, obviously, but like, it's really hard to put on a lot of muscle, right? It's so hard. It's actually so hard to do. So whenever men or women, like you're saying, they say, I don't want to get super bulky, or I'm scared of getting super bulky. The high school girls say this a lot as well. Like, I don't want to get super bulky. It's like, it's actually really hard. It's actually really, really hard and takes a really long time for you to get really bulky, you know? And so like doing some strength training, especially at their age, a little bit older, doing a little more sports stuff. It's like managing the heavy weights is not something that's going to make you super bulky. And like the heavy weights are more strength anyways, not so much hypertrophy growth style, right? So
unless you're like a straight power lifter or Olympic lifter and it's like heavy, fast reps, low, whatever it is, you get an ass the size of a freaking Volkswagen on you, and which is good for sports. But
and it's the same with the guys too. It's the same thing. Like you're not going to get that big, gross, like huge muscle ridiculousness. It's hard to do that. Like you have to do that very focused, specific style training for a long period of time to get that. So
you got to work really hard, which a lot of people are allergic to that, to the work and to the focus and the dedication and the eating and all that. So anyways, I digress.
Strength training leads to early or delayed puberty, both. As one of the that's a big myth, yeah, which is not true at all.
So if you start lifting, if you do strength training, you could hit puberty early, or might be late. So it could be like depends when you hit it.
Yeah. And then the last one was strength training requires expensive equipment or professional trainers. That's another big one. So those were, I think that was actually more or less straight from the episode, those 6 myths, which I think is, I wanted to make sure I hit those because those are things that are very common. I hear those kinds of things all the time. And it's important that people understand what's more true or not true. We argued about truth the other day of like, how do you know it's just what someone says and all that shit.
But come to basic understanding that we can agree that this is a starting point.
That's right. So
that was a good talk, by the way.
It was a good talk. So as long as like people have that frame, I wanted to make sure I hit on at least the myth things, because that can be something that keeps you from allowing your kids to do things, you know? And like one of the things that I thought was great is one of the points of emphasis, especially when they're young, is to make sure that the primary goal, I love this, man. This was awesome. The primary goal is for them to enjoy the thing that they're doing, like reinforcing a positive experience with whatever the training is. So from the time they're young kids until they're old enough to start to get into like the specialization a little bit. So let's say when they're like late high school, I think was the mark that he used in the episode, but like somewhere around there where you start to like really specify in your sport, like everything should be everything should be centered around positive experience with the training stimulus, like that the kid likes it and enjoys it, and it's directed. So, you know,
so that he'd want to do it again?
Yeah. Right. Like no shit. So it's like if they don't like going in the gym, for example, like some people don't like going in the gym, right? Like they don't want to be in the gym. Maybe they like to go outside. You know, maybe they want to be on a beach. Maybe they want to be in a forest. Maybe they want to be doing something different through sport, through whatever. And there's so many different mediums that kids can explore to find something that they like that's active, you know? And so it doesn't have to be one thing, and it should all start from that. It should start from, do they enjoy the thing that they're doing? And they can train in that environment, right? So that's like a primary goal number 1, which I thought was awesome because it's almost like understood to the point where people don't even think about it. And like you can forget that it should be the primary driver when kids are talking about training and becoming competent with whatever it is that they're doing. So I really like that quite a lot. So from the time, like a lot of people that listen to this, their kids are going to be prepubescent. Some of them are just starting. Some of them are a little further along, maybe closer to the junior hockey age. And so I want to just talk a little bit about the arc. And I know you know a lot about this already as well. So you can add if there's anything to add. Kind of what it looks like going from, let's say you're like seriously coming right out of the chute, you can walk until you're up to specialization age, late high school, and into your early 20s when it starts to become like athlete-centric and hyper focusing on specific things about your sport. And so the first is, we talk about this all the time with like long-term athletic development planning, is like the play-based, age-appropriate, common sense types of things. So one awesome example I had is I was upstairs. I work out in the gym upstairs here quite a bit, and I can see down into the soccer fields. So I was here on one of the weekends in the morning, and I was working out, and I could see down into the soccer field, and there's these little kids, man. And it's like, it's so fun to watch little kids, and it can also be a pain in the ass to watch little kids, but it's so fun to watch them just like figuring it out. So they're playing soccer, right? And it's the easiest game ever to play. All kids,
per kid.
All kids
you kick a ball in your eye.
Like they just intuitively know to kick. Right, I'm sure you've seen this like with your grandbabies. They're running around just kicking stuff and smacking things and whatever. And so these kids they're like 4, 5, 6, 7 ish. Okay, they got their shin guards on, soccer shin guard. They're too big for their freaking legs. Like they go up above their knees. They got their little pretend spikes on and their little soccer outfit, and they're just chugging around. And I'm watching, and the coaches are just allowing the kids to run around and kick the ball around, and the coaches are kind of floating, trying to just like poke it away from them, right? And so I'm watching, and I'm thinking it's so funny that how many parents would like have a problem with that. You know, they watch this practice, let's say, and it's like, whoa, where are the drills? Like, where's the structure? Like, why aren't they lining up? Why don't you have enough people out there why is it just chaos? And it's like, the kids want to play, man. Like, they want to just piss around. Right? And like, you can organize a game. Like, you can't even really do competitive games with them yet. Like, they don't even know how to stand up. right? They don't know how to stand on one leg, and they can barely jump. They can barely move on one foot, you know? And so if you talk about strength training, that's all part of that. That's part of strength training. They're learning to balance on one foot and move and kick and roll and fall down and get up and this kind of stuff. So it was cool to watch. Like upstairs, I'm just watching it be fun, and it was mayhem. It was absolute chaos. There was like enough adults that it was contained, but they were just letting them run around, like run wild, kick the ball, kick it into the net, take the ball out, run the other way, fall down, get up, trip over the ball, and all this stuff. And that's actually perfectly age appropriate for what they need. And that's kind of where it starts, whether it's a sport or not, right? And I remember you used to say this with little Charlie. Like he would come in when he was 4. You were telling the story today about you had to get him a kettlebell when he was little, because you had whatever.
He was in diapers.
Yeah, what was it in the garage? Like, what was the story?
So Dalton, that works with us now.
Yeah.
So his family lived right kitty corner to us, and they didn't have, like, they had 4 kids or 5 kids all playing travel sports and stuff, and I loved their family, right? Charlie was just like in diapers, and Charlie was a little beauty. He'd come with me everywhere, right? And he was just saying, he goes, I remember being like 8 years old, hanging out with them when they were 15 and 18 years old, and we were buddies, right? So anyways, I told them, because they wanted to come to my gym, and I can't just pick them up and go because I was at early in the morning, come back late and all that stuff. So I said, listen, I'll make a deal with you guys. If you guys get up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning for like this period of time, and you meet me on my concrete slab at my house, I'll have equipment there. And if you get up, I will be there ready to go, and I'll work you guys out. So like, cool. So Charlie, with limited words, said, I want to work out too. If he's speaking in diapers, I don't know why he was in diapers, but he was a baby in diapers or rubber boots, whatever it was. He was like very, very, very young, barely can speak. So the kids came. He's a little baby, so I wasn't gonna wake him up for 6 o'clock in the morning workout. You
lunatic.
Right? Yeah, you freaking you nut. So the kids came, and they're out there, and I was getting them kind of warmed up, and I had kettlebells and a few different things. And then he came out on the sliding door, and he was crying, and you said I could work out. So I'm like, okay, yeah, come on there, diaper boy. So he was coming on there, but he was mad. So anyways, I said, I'll get you a kettlebell, or I'll get you some weights. And then I found like a smallest kettlebell. Like it was at the gym. It was a door stopper at one time. And that's how he started working out. But he was so mad at me. Yeah. So like he really, guys, is like, so he was less than 3, more than 2 years old. And it was like, I wasn't going to say, no, you're not allowed to exercise, son. It was like the best thing. He wasn't committed, by the way.
Right. Like he'd do it for a few minutes.
Yeah. Some days he'd just shit his pants and lay in his crib, and other days he'd want to come out or whatever. But it's like he wasn't committed to working out. He was just like he wanted to.
Did you hear that, Charlie, or no? Yeah.
And then, but it was good for him. He tried.
Right, and that's exactly how it starts and where it starts. But people don't necessarily think of that as like strength training.
The best thing, though, now that I remember all this stuff, is when he would work out, he would see me breathe, or he'd see the boys. I'd say, like, on your exhales, like on your concentrics or whatever, eccentrics, you breathe in and you breathe out. So it's like if you're pushing, like, so he would have like this kettlebell, and we would do like Turkish sit-ups. So that's a sit-up, feet up, and you're pushing up with the kettlebell, and he'd have the face like. He'd do a swing, but it's like there's no weight, man. but so just a side note of that, like I know it sounds funny and all the stuff, and you go whatever, but like it's so funny when you're around role models, when you're around new things, or you imitate, right? So like in his mind, he was going to be a pro hockey player here at 2 years old, and you work out, and these guys are pushing, and when they push, they're like. So it's like your environment, like, see what I mean? Like, it's like your environment is like you're going to be who you're like. So he actually wanted to imitate those guys, right? So like that's another good thing is you're around you're around people that are doing things, and you put them in an environment where they're trying different things and growing in different ways, and it's all good, right?
Yeah, and another way of thinking about it too is how you. I was kind of saying this yesterday. We were talking to some parents. How you think of things as an adult, like if you. Think about like strength training as a grown-up or training as a grown-up. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do, 3 sets of this and 4 sets of this and this many reps and whatever. And that's not how a kid would think about doing it. So they would think about, I'm going to go run around and I'm going to try to lift this thing, and then I'm going to try to push that, and then I'm going to try to pull on this, and then I'm going to roll over, and then I'm going to crawl there. And yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's kind of how it progresses. So it turns from, in the way that Andy was laying it out in the podcast, not you, Andy, different Andy. Yeah, this Andy.
A lot of Andys out there.
Yeah, a lot of Andys. So he says, you go from that play thing, and then you start to turn it into play based with a little bit of like you can add some competitiveness to it, and turn it into like a competitive game, like to try to make them go as fast as they can, or as many as they can, or whatever. So now you're adding a layer of complexity to the task that they have to do, stringing multiple things together. You got to jump, and then you got to run, and then you got to roll over, like that kind of stuff. So now you're layering complexity on the training. Now you're stringing together movements. Now it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And now there's like a goal at the end of it. I'm trying to get to this point. So we went from kind of chaotic, play-based, mess around, like feel things out in a safe environment, to do it with a purpose, multiple movements, with some level of competitiveness to it. And that will take you right up until basically that puberty age, right? And then from that point, that's when now you start to say, okay, we want to kind of level this up and turn this into more structured, goal-oriented, with purpose training in the gym. So now it's like, instead of it being just fun and just fun plus competitiveness, now it's like, okay, maybe it's not so fun because you're old enough to understand delayed gratification, sacrifice for something better later, and those types of concepts.
Or you just need to now.
Yeah, right.
Like for a sport, you need to.
And they can grasp what that means. They are old enough to see, okay, like this might not be my favorite thing to do necessarily, but I know that doing this will help me. They're old enough to understand that kind of concept. So now you can start to do actual, like in the gym focused specific movement patterns to lay like good foundations that will later apply to sport. And then from there you go to apply to sport. And now I'm like specializing, and that brings you kind of to that late high school kind of age, right? So with our guys that are grade 11, 12, that's what we're kind of starting to do now. It's like their off-season program, though there's a lot of foundation stuff still at the beginning. Towards the end, it's starting to look very specific for hockey purposes. I was giving them the example of like interval training. If you do, if you're a 100-meter sprinter, for example, and you're gonna run it in as a younger person, 12 seconds. If you're amazing at a little bit older, it's 10 seconds or a little more than that. If you're an Olympian, but let's say it's 12 seconds. Well, your training interval will look a lot like 12 seconds. If you run 200 meters, it'd be whatever it is, double that, right? If you play hockey, most of the intervals you're going to do going as hard as possible are going to be no longer than like 7 seconds, right? That's what they found in the sport of hockey. So if you're doing very, very intense interval training specific for hockey purposes, then 7 seconds is a good length of time to go as hard as you can go. And so that's where the specificity will start to come in later down the road towards the end of that arc. And then that will carry you through your time as an athlete, right? Where you're specifically training for sport. And then when you're done, it almost reverses itself, right? Like I said earlier, it goes the opposite way. You go back to more basics, foundations, well-rounded, that type of stuff, more general. And so I think that's kind of like how that progression should look. So if you have a kid that's 8, if you have a kid that's 12, like I had a dad message me the other day about off-season training, and I think his kid's like is 12, I think 11. He's like, hey, are you going to have any training for the off-season? It's like, okay, there's going to need to be a conversation there about what does training look like. And do you expect him to do the training that the 16-year-olds are doing? Because that's not actually appropriate. If your kid is younger than that, what I just said should give a little bit of framework of what might be appropriate for that age. So hopefully that is like somewhat helpful. The last part that I'll kind of touch on, and then hopefully you guys that are listening, if it's interesting to you, you go listen to it, because I think it was like a 3-hour podcast, which I know can be a lot, but you can chunk it down because I thought it was super useful. Talking about like the risks of early specialization and how like every piece of research everywhere shows that being multi-sport, multidisciplinary in that sense, and training in different ways is long-term much more beneficial to kids that are elite in their individual sport later on. So I think one of the examples they use is that for NFL players, 90-something percent of them played 3 sports at least until whatever the age was, as an example. And like we're getting more and more to this, 12-month season. And, if you're going more than 8, like, you're starting to really, really be specializing in what it is that you're doing. And so, like, as much as the parents want to go through spring hockey and they want to go through summer hockey, and it's like, well, I want to be on the ice once a week. I still want to just, be touching it once a week. Like, that is just opposite of what research shows you. That doesn't mean you can never touch a hockey stick necessarily, right? It's just how much time you're actually focusing on just the one sport when they're younger is not better. That's what research shows over time. It's not better to be hyper focused on the one thing. As much as you're going to get FOMO, as much as you're going to keep up with the Joneses type mentality and all this shit, as much as that could happen because everyone feels like they got to be doing something all the time, it just doesn't bear out over time. It doesn't. For like the elite of the elite, right? The world champions, the Olympians, the professional athletes, the vast, vast, vast majority of them were not hyper specializing super early. And there's that book, I forget that, I'm blanking on the name of it now, that I read that was talking about. You know what I'm talking about?
Talking about like
Tiger Woods, the person in chess.
Yeah, you're talking about, it was basically the early adapters is what you're saying.
Yeah, it wasn't Outliers.
No,
it was,
no.
That's going to piss me off.
I remember the book too.
It's going to piss me off. Blanking on the title. Anyways, people get my point.
Yeah.
That's going to bug me.
I'll say something on that because I had a conversation yesterday with one of our athletes that, and this is, so I'm careful when I talk about one of our athletes and not naming names and all that stuff and maybe offending or not giving them, not getting approval to talk, but it's just a story. So it's nothing good or bad. Anyways, one of the conversations was, one of his coaches asked, "Hey, Andy, can you just maybe pipe in your thoughts of, do you think, because he's at the academy right now and at the end of his season, the AAA season, which was a few days ago, he's called up to play in the OJHL as a 16-year-old. Maybe he's 15 still. I'm not really even sure, which is awesome. That's a pretty good compliment. So he goes, do you think he should be doing both? So I said, well, I don't. And, I was explaining it exactly like this again. I said, I don't, but I said, you're going to do whatever you want to do because it's like, it's okay. Like nothing's going to change anyway, either way. You're like as far as the draft goes or what people think of you and all that kind of stuff. But I said, I would think of this long term. I said, like, so number one, if you play for the junior A team, it's like there's a little bit more focus because it's a jump for you. Not much, but it's a jump. And you need to be good and you need to perform. It's more performance based and whatever. I said, and that's enough. But what I want you to understand is that as a 15-year-old kid, you don't even know what hard work is yet. And I don't mean that like you're a dumb shit that doesn't know how to work hard. What I meant was you don't know if you're working hard. Like you don't know if you're tired. You don't know if you're exhausted. You don't know if you're fresh. You're 15. So this is a player that has played probably some spring hockey, does some training, has practiced so many times. So this year he's been on the ice in the morning and then with his team and then some with the junior A practices. And then they just went through all their playoffs, OHL Cup. And it's not like he's on every third shift or fourth shift. He's on the ice all the time. Like he's nonstop on the ice. So I know just from being an adult and an athlete that's a lot of hockey. So somewhere inside you're tired. So I said, but you might not know you're tired. So if you continue to keep going and going and going, you'll still not know. But if you slow it down a little bit, you still might not know either. But you don't know if you're hungry or not. You think you are. You just want to play. And I get it. Like like I said, it's not a good or a bad. It's just I'm making him aware of something. So, but what's going to come now that you're going to be a high pick, especially, and even for the kids that are later picks or whatever, it's a weird year. In Canada, anyways, it's that 16-year-old year where you have an opportunity to possibly play at a junior level or whatever. So most of these kids go to different camps. So I said, what's going to happen is you're going to get drafted real early. You're going to be playing these games. And if you continue in the morning, you got that extra ice. And then all of a sudden, the team that drafts you is going to say, well, we want you to come up and do a press conference and we're going to give you your equipment and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's that weekend or the weekend after you're going to do a rookie camp. And then in between that, you still might be playing in your playoffs with the junior A team. And then after that, you're going to go to the U17 camp. And then you're going to hopefully somewhere in between between take a break, but we're thinking, okay, I got to play in the OHL, so I got to make sure I'm good. So you're going to train, because that's actually the most important thing, that you're lifting weights and you're getting your body in condition. But most people are going to continue to play. But anyways, what I said, at the end of the summer, you're going to go to your camp, you're going to be excited and blah, 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 blah. And you're going to work hard, and you're going to go to under 17 again and all that stuff. But this is what's going to happen as hockey becomes real. And now, if you are tired, which you don't know yet because you're young, or you're just not fresh. I mean, like, you know the difference between hungry and not, and fresh and tired. Like there's a fine line. So at some point next year, something's not going to go your way as a 16-year-old rookie, and it might be the tiredness and maybe you're not getting the ice. It's impossible to get the ice that he had this year. So it's that might be a big like mental break. It might not be, but all these things are going to play, and then all of a sudden, sometime in November or December, cold winter night, you're going to be on that ice every day with your team, and the coach is not kissing your ass anymore. Or I don't mean it like kissing your ass, but like you're not the best player right now. You won't be. It's not pretty much not possible. Now you're proving yourself, and like now the wear of maybe getting approval, or maybe it's the stress of I'm not getting the ice, or just I'm at the rink every day, but it's like now I got to perform. Like it's like they're on me for everything. That weighs on you and stuff, and then at some point you sit there and you go, you're cold in the bedroom at the new house that is not your real home. And you just sit there and you go, I just don't know if I want to do this. And the more tired you are, the more that plays on you, right? But so anyways, my point was, like, if you can dial some back a little bit, because you're going to find out like at some point that, oh, I could have been fresher, right? Yeah. So and like kids that go to junior for the first year, like OHL especially, and no different. Like me and my son, like I still try to help him think a little bit, and it's really hard to say this time needs to be nothing, or nothing meaning no hockey, you're not lifting, you got to recover. It's a really, really, really hard thing, but without it, you never know if you ever recover. And the time off, you will not lose any hockey ability in 1 month or 2 months. Might be better for you than not. And if you just like you said, you play pickleball every night, it's a nice exercise where you're getting coordination stuff and your mind is away from it. Because as much as you get tired physically, it's mentally that how do you even measure it? Right? How do you even measure it?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I mean, but especially for that kid, he's on the younger side of all this, where like that specialization stuff, like it's pretty early still, like you should still want to be doing some other stuff and have time for that, and I think that kind of like puts a good bow on that, because I know that's always a controversial discussion about the specialization stuff, and so it's funny to see how, as guys get older, even though they should be hyper specialized now, they still find time to actually take a break. Like they feel like they can carve that time out, especially when you would argue that it would be the opposite, and like for kids that are even younger than that, the pressure of maintaining the output, that was the name of the book, I think. Output. I think it was Output. I got to check now.
It's funny because we were just talking about, like, one of the boys working here says, so what are you doing with Charlie this summer? Or what's Charlie, not what am I doing, but kind of what am I doing? Like, what do you have for Charlie this summer? And what's Charlie doing this summer? And I'm like, don't know yet. And they're like, what? And I said, it actually doesn't even matter. And they're like, really? Like, you're not going to push them to be, or you don't want to get them on the ice and all that? And I said, actually, like, I'm actually getting maybe more intelligent as I get older. And so is he. And of course he dies not to be on the ice and all that stuff, but he knows that lifting, boxing, and what else does he do? Track is
jiu-jitsu with Eric,
and jiu-jitsu with you. Those are his priorities. And eating well, and then touching the ice, like working when he works here in the summertime, he touches the puck is good, and then play some games. So like a lot of people would say, well, what about a skating coach? What about stick handling? What about, he's fine. He's good. He's good by doing track and lifting right. His speed and his power is going to be just fine. He's going to be coordinated. He plays all these other different sports, and then it doesn't take. Oh man, it's so funny. It doesn't take 2-3 months to maintain your hockey IQ and your skill level, you could start in August, man. I'm not suggesting that to anybody, but like if he said I'm not skating until August, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. If and any dad that says like, yeah, you're just saying that, no. I would have a little bit of like, is that because you don't want to or whatever? But he said, no, Dad, I'm not doing one thing on the ice till August. And then August, I'll hit the bricks and get going. I'd be, yeah, it's cool, man. Like, it's cool. Take your mind off it and go, because it's not going to hurt you.
The book Output is a different book I read. The book that I was thinking of was called Range. David Epstein.
Right on.
Range.
I read one
David
of his
Epstein.
books too.
So that was the one that I was talking about, early specialization and all that stuff, which is cool. So anyways, I barely scratched the surface on like all the content in that episode. I would not be able to even come close to doing it the same justice that he does it. And he talks for about 3 hours in this podcast, but it was awesome. I was really, I don't even want to use the word impressed because he does awesome work. So that was kind of expected, but like how applicable it could be to people that want to listen to it. I hope that is a resource that you can find. So I'm going to link to it in the show notes of this one, because I think it's worth spending some time listening to for people that want to learn more about that away from the rink stuff and how it can be beneficial and what kids should focus on which age. It'll give you some knowledge, to investigate and do things for your kid, but also to like avoid the salesman, understand a little bit about what they should and shouldn't be doing, what's worth your money and what isn't. And hopefully that's something that could be helpful.
So one of the things like finishing it here, by the way, one of the things is like, it's actually not that complicated to a certain degree, only to a certain degree. But like for an adult, for example, we had, when one of my gyms is this guy would call like, oh, I'm going on vacation in 3 weeks. I got to get in the gym. Okay, come on in. Well, what do I do? So you write out stuff and then, well, that's too hard. This, that, the other thing. And it's like, he did that like 4 or 5 times. And finally I said, listen, man, you're complicated. There's not a magic formula. Like if you want to stay in shape, pick something up a bunch of times, run a little bit. Like you're not trying to be a Greek god, right? You're just trying to trim down and look as like somewhat good. And you're trying to do it in 3-week increments. Fine. But like it doesn't have to have this master plan. Just move a lot more, and you're gonna get something, right? So that's what I say with young kids too. Or dads that don't. I can't afford a personal trainer. You don't actually have to have one. You could kind of get an outline of what you could do and improvise. And maybe some guys like just can't wrap their head around that, and that's fine. But like it's not. If you did 1,000 push-ups a day, don't take this to the freaking bank. But if you did 1,000 push-ups a day and 1,000 squats a day, or 500 or 20 and 20 or 50 and whatever it is, you'll get some benefit out of it, as a beginner, right? Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, go listen to it. I think it's good. I'm going to stop now.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.